GearNetwork.com.
This is a Gear Network production.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's your boy, Mr. Perez, and you're listening to the Better Live Than Dead podcast.
I don't really know how to start. It's kind of a somber podcast because
I'll start it off for you, Ryan. I'll start it off for you. I'm driving right now on the 90, and some Jeep just drove by me. I don't know if it was a Jeep or a Hummer, but they put Christmas lights all over their cars. So happy Christmas, everybody.
Jesus. Yeah, that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about idiots, idiotic people. I can't even talk. First time, long time, we're back. It's Ryan Wolfe, it's Brayton Wilson, it's a BLTD podcast. I'm not sure if it's a podcast or it's an extra. It's something. We're here, we're live, we're better live than dead on the Uber conference chatting right now. Brayton's in his car on a Bluetooth, obviously. He's driving safe. He's practicing safe driving. He uses a car condom.
Incorporated, so we're okay.
He uses a car condom, everybody. He uses his Bluetooth.
We're legal.
The Buffalo Bills lost on this wonderful Sunday, dropping to 6-7 on the season, and the Buffalo Sabres have been kind of completing the roller coaster season up to this point. I believe we're 27 games into an 82-game season, and it's been a roller coaster. So, first off, I want to say thank you to everybody for tuning in. Thanks everyone for sticking around and keeping an eye on the website lately. Personally, everyone's been busy. I've been sick, so it's been very hard to keep up on things, but that's why we're doing this today. We didn't catch the last quick hits for the Capitals game because, let's be honest, there wasn't much to talk about. The Sabres didn't play very well, have been kind of playing better, but it's just we want to talk more about the overall sports scene in the Buffalo area with the Buffalo Bills pretty much. Unless, like I said earlier to my wonderful girlfriend, if the Buffalo Bills wanted to make the playoffs, they better hope for the earth to crash into the sun, because that's about as good of a chance as they'll have of making the playoffs, because they could have lost to Oakland or they could have lost to Pittsburgh. Instead, they lost to both. Their playoff hopes, I think, are like 3 or 4, maybe 5% at this point in time. So it's something, but I mean, Brayton, you've been working a lot at GR lately, obviously, producing, doing some behind-the-scenes stuff. So like I said, you have, before the podcast, I said you've kind of got a good grasp of the Buffalo sport fan. But after this 6-7, the loss that brings the Bills to 6-7 on the season, I mean, what do the Buffalo Bills do at this point?
Well, I mean, today was probably the first game we've seen that the Buffalo Bills pretty much essentially quit on Rex Ryan. I mean, it's sad but true, but I think that the Rex Ryan era is coming to an end quite soon here in Buffalo, just because of the fact that this team, Rex comes in, turns a pretty decent defense into a mediocre defense. The run game gets going because LaShawn McCoy comes here, and Mike Gillislee has been a nice little addition for the Bills. But aside from that, the Bills still lack a quarterback. They do not have a franchise. It's going to be the guy. Well, it's obviously becoming, it's becoming obvious that it's not going to happen for Tyrod. He's not going to be the quarterback. He's likely not going to get that extension that he was signed to during the offseason. Now, and with Rex Ryan, it's just the same stuff out of him. And, you just don't know what – I think you pretty much know what you're going to expect out of Rex, just, mediocre play calling with a lot of mediocre play from his players. And I think that it showed today because on defense, they just let Le'Veon Bell run all over them today. Guys were taking tackles. Guys were just kind of, giving it, half of their effort to go after these guys and make tackles. And on offense, Tyrod Taylor just, again, couldn't throw until it was garbage time, where he ended up throwing for 228 yards and 2 touchdowns and a pick. And everybody says, 228 and 2 touchdowns and a pick, that's not bad. Yeah, but when you're getting most of that in garbage time and you only throw for 71 yards in 3 quarters, that is ridiculously bad. I think, and I know that Jason La Canfora, for whatever people want to take him, sometimes he gets things right. Oftentimes, not the case. He gets things a lot of the time wrong. But whether it's tomorrow, whether it's at the end of the season, Rex Ryan's future in Buffalo is done. I think that it's becoming quite obvious that he's no longer going to be the coach when it comes to January 2nd, when the season's officially over. And Tyrod Taylor's not going to get the extension, and those are going to once again be looking for a quarterback, be looking for a head coach, general manager. I wouldn't think so. I think that they're pretty much saying Doug Whaley stays. I know that Doug Whaley has been on and off with drafting lately. I know that he's been on and off with free agent signing, but I do have to say I think Doug Whaley does an adequate job. I think that he will be the coach, or not the coach, the general manager of this team for at least another year. I know he was just recently signed to an extension, but the reaction has been, Tyrod's done, Rex is done. And I know people are calling for Whaley and Russ Brandon, but I just want to make one thing clear, and I told this to you, Ryan, before we went on. For people that want Russ Brandon fired, what good does it do to the football side of things for the Bills? It does absolutely nothing, because I get it. He hired Doug Marrone. He hired Doug Whaley. However you want to look at it. He's no longer in a position to be making football moves anymore. He is the business guy. He is solely business. He is solely focused on ticket sales, on anything that's going on around the arena or around the stadium and arena with Sabres spots. But there's nothing he's going to do that will affect the football side of things for the Bills. To fire him absolutely gets you nowhere. You're better off either. Go ahead.
I was saying, I think at this point, people are just bloodthirsty. They just want to see something happen. I mean, and to go back to the game really fast before we go to that, Le'Veon Bell today himself, one man, outgained the entire Buffalo Bills, 298 to 275. I mean, this game seemed like a microcosm of the entire Rex Ryan era to this point so far. I mean, like you said, Brayton, the Buffalo Bills defense was great. They were top 5 in the league. Rex Ryan comes in supposed to be a defensive-minded guy, changes the system, the defense gets poor. I mean, Stephon Gilmore, we've talked about him time and time again. He may not be a top 5 cornerback in the league, but if playing in the right system, can be a pretty damn good cornerback, and he's looked terrible. And he's going to go somewhere else and get paid and probably be okay. I mean, Doug Whaley, I feel like Doug Whaley's done a good enough job to keep his job. I know we saw the Jason La Canfora report you mentioned. I think they need to let Doug Whaley pick a coach and have a guy that's his guy, because we've known since day one Rex Ryan wasn't a Doug Whaley guy. It was a it was a Pagula hire. And the thing about it too is we go back and we continue to preach continuity. A good friend of the podcast, Frank Giafaldi, has pointed out, what does firing Rex Ryan and getting rid of Tyrod Taylor do? While they haven't been effective, yes. They haven't been in the playoffs, yes. But what happens when you get rid of those two guys? Pushes you right back to the start again, where you're trying to find, you've got a new guy at the top, you've got a new quarterback under center, and you're trying to do the same exact thing you've been doing for the past 17 years. So it's almost like it starts at the top with the ownership. The ownership needs to figure out. It's like what happened with the Sabres and what's happening with the Sabres. Terry Pagula and Kim Pagula are finding out that it's not as easy as it seems to run professional sports franchise. It's like it's a giant growing pain that the entire Buffalo area is going through, and it's hard. It's very hard because the Sabres haven't been in the playoffs in a handful of years. As we mentioned, the Bills are likely headed for year 17 of no playoffs, and it's the same thing every year. You get a couple wins where they shouldn't have won the game. You get a couple losses where they should have won the game, and then the rest of it is just 500 mediocre football, and you win 8 or 9 games, maybe 7 games, and then it's a lost season. I mean, at some point in time, and I think a lot of people want Russ Brandon fired because it's like a sacrificial lamb. I mean, it would be nice to see it happen, but like you said, Brayton, it does absolutely nothing for football. At this point in time...
If you wanted to fire Russ Brandon, you should have done it years ago when he was actually running football things before he handed things off to Doug Whaley.
At this point in time, you have to do like what you did with the Buffalo Sabres. You entrust your general manager that he knows what he's doing, and you let him do what he needs to do to make this team good. You need to bring in whoever you think is the best coach for the team. You need to go out there. I don't give a damn if what it costs at this point. You have to go out and get a franchise quarterback. I don't know if Tony Romo is the answer because that's just a patch for a couple years. Maybe you can bring Tony Romo in and you can win 10 games and maybe get a wild card spot. But guess what? In a year or two, you're right back in the same spot as you were before. You have to go out and get that guy who you think is going to be the future of the franchise. And if not, you're going to keep doing this year in and year out. I mean, you see what you could try to do what Denver does or what Denver did. I mean, granted, Denver had the shell of Peyton Manning, so you can go out and build a top 3 defense and trust. I mean, if you get, excuse me, a decent quarterback, and you get that you have a solid line like you do right now with the Buffalo Bills. LaShawn McCoy can run for 1,200 yards, 1,200 yards. And you can probably win 8 games with a halfway decent defense, a mediocre quarterback, and LaShawn McCoy. I mean, go out and draft a wide receiver, and like the thing that continues to get me every single time we talk about this is that it's almost as if the Bills continue to put themselves in situations to lose, both in the front office and on the field. The talent isn't as good as it could be. They are, everything's just counterproductive. At some point in time, you need to put all your eggs in one basket, because it seems like at this point the Bills organization is almost trying not to foul, and that's the problem. Is they're being too safe. They're saying, okay, Tyrod Taylor, he's okay. He's doing good enough. And that's not even the case all the time. Some of the times he's doing good enough. And that is the problem. They aren't okay with, okay, we got our asses kicked. We look like a bunch of idiots. We have to go change the game plan and go out and try something different. They'll say, yeah, like I guarantee you at some point in time this week, you're going to hear, oh yeah, the Bills lost, but it was only by a few points. But then you have to remember the 2 touchdowns they scored were in garbage time. They got their asses kicked that entire game, and then the fourth quarter when the Steelers put it in cruise control, the Bills score a couple touchdowns and look dominant. And you wonder, where was that the entire game? But when the Steelers defense was actually playing football, it couldn't happen. So, I mean, I like I said, I'm a firm believer of the top-down method. Like it's, I know it's 2 different sports, but it's the same problem. You look at the Buffalo Sabres, where they preach continuity. They kept Darcy Regier, they kept Lindy Ruff. Then they changed it, and they were like, this isn't working out so well. They put a guy on Tim Murray who wasn't a Tim Murray guy. They put Ted Nolan on Tim Murray because they wanted to keep asses in the seats or whatever it may have been at that point in time. And now Tim Murray has his guy. Yeah, there is still some growing pains. There's going to be growing pains, but they're heading in the right direction. They've still got some bloated contracts. They've still got some old talentless or players who have seen better days that had talent that they're, like Josh Georges. He may not have ever been a fantastic player, but when he was in Montreal, there was some talent in those boots. But now you can tell Josh Georges is over the hill. He's not the player he was, but you have to make do with what you have. And I feel like the Buffalo Sabres are trending in the right direction, but the Buffalo Sabres, essentially at this point in time, and I know it's kind of unfair because I don't think Rex Ryan is a terrible coach. I don't think he's a great coach, but I don't think he's a terrible coach. I mean, he took 2 great defenses and Mark Sanchez to the AFC Championship game in back-to-back seasons. Something's got to be spoken for that. I mean, he did something well there. But
absolutely,
I feel like at this point in time, it's almost like Doug Whaley with, and I'm not saying that Doug Whaley's great either because we don't know. I mean, he's made some great moves. Kiko Alonso for LaShawn McCoy being one of them. He moved up to pick up Sammy Watkins, and aside from injuries, Watkins has been okay. But I almost feel like it's the Ted Nolan to Tim Murray is the Rex Ryan to Doug Whaley. He's not a Doug Whaley guy. We've heard the rumors, we've heard the talk. I mean, if anything, what the Buffalo Bills need to do, first off, find the mole in the organization. Find the guy who's talking to the media, telling Jason La Canfora this stuff. Get him out of there. Because you know what? Even if you're gonna fire Rex Ryan, even if Rex Ryan's already been fired in your mind, but you're gonna let him coach out the season, or Tyrod Taylor, is never going to take a snap for the Buffalo Bills past this season. You've already decided that, but he's going to finish out the season at quarterback. Okay, that's no one else's business until the season's over. But again, I understand it happens with every organization. But the thing about it is, the thing that always gets me, when stuff happens with like the Patriots, things rarely, I'm not going to say nothing ever leaks out. Things rarely leak out in good organizations. So it almost tells me that there's a level of dysfunction at the top, at the middle, and at the bottom of the Bills organization because, like I said, you've got ownership doesn't know what they want to do. You've got a GM who has to work with a coach who's not his coach, and the coach is not his GM. Yeah, that's all mixed up. The players are playing weird systems. I know they're professionals and stuff, but we know how sports work. You get players for systems so they can be the best player possible. Stuff like that. It's just all sorts of dysfunction from top to bottom.
Yeah, and I think that tying the Sabres back into the Bills, I was thinking about this earlier, and I know I'm going to bring this word back up, and I think everybody will hate me for doing it, but the T word, tank. I was thinking about that earlier today, and I'm thinking, what good would it do for the Bills to essentially just tank one season in a year where there's going to be a good quarterback class, and you finish dead last or second to dead last, and you get the guy that you want to be your quarterback for years to come down the road. Next year's quarterback class in the draft seems to be, as of right now, pretty darn good. There's a few good names out there that are going to be probably out there next year. But the problem that you run into is that you've got a bunch of really talented players that you guarantee you that are not going to buy in to a product like this. They're not going to buy into a tank. LaShawn McCoy, Sammy Watkins, Marcel Darius, Kyle Williams, these type of guys that if the Bills organization says, all right, we're going to basically do what the Sabres did. We're going to be terrible with a mediocre coach, mediocre quarterback, and be terrible for 1 year, and then try and draft high for the franchise guy. You're probably pretty sure that none of those guys that are the really good players are going to say, I approve of this. I'm okay with giving up a season, to just pretty much lose and be downright terrible just to get one guy, like a Jack Eichel equivalent to football, which is like a quarterback. I mean, I don't think there's going to be a lot of players on the Bills that are going to approve of being terrible for 1 year to get that quarterback, get that one guy that you think can turn around this franchise and get this team back into the playoffs for the first time in 16, which will be eventually 17 seasons. It's so tough to think about it because it's likely not going to happen. You want this team to be successful. You want them to have that franchise guy. You want them to win. You want them to be able to come away and finally end this drought. And it's just not going to happen. And that's the worst part because this team has so much talent everywhere else except for quarterback. And E.J. Manuel never got it done. Kyle Orton never got it done. Tyrod Taylor's not getting it done. Is Cardell Jones going to get it done? From everything that I'm gathering, people do like him. But is he going to be a guy that could be a future? I don't know because he's such a project. The thing is, the Bills need a guy. And, who are you going to look to this offseason to be your franchise quarterback for the next couple of years? Tony Romo, he's injured all the time. He's getting older. Jay Cutler, he's been getting injured all the time. He's getting older. That's a guy that is just kind of a gunslinger, just like Ryan Fitzpatrick was. So that's not really going to be a good option.
Even if you take injuries out of it, because you can't predict injuries, just looking at Romo's age, you can't bank on him being around forever. Jay Cutler, he's been ineffective in Chicago. He's had a couple good seasons in a career, handful of good seasons in a career. Aside from that, I agree with you. I don't necessarily think you need to go out and lose, but you need to be better at scouting and figure out which player has the intangibles that's going to put you over. Because I'll tell you what, I don't know how many Bills fans, and I'm not trying to do the little woe is me thing. I'll tell you what, because we've talked about this before. I don't know how many Bills fans can say that they've had it as bad as people like me in my age group, where the first Bills game I remember watching was the Music City Miracle. So I tell people that was the game I've been a fan since. I was 8 years old. I'm 25 now, okay? I've seen the Bills. I was going to say, I've seen the Bills win more than 8 games twice.
Yeah.
2004 with Mike Mularkey, 2014 with Doug Marrone. So,
and I was talking about earlier today.
I'm as unbiased as possible. I've detached myself from football. I'm outside looking in. You know, I'm done enjoying the process, as they like to say. I'm done with that. I'm just. You call it as how you see it. It's a quarterback-driven league. You need. Sorry, Brayton. You need a quarterback, and every year you go out and try to fool yourself by saying, we picked up Tyrod Taylor off the scrap heap for a couple $100,000. We're going to give him $15, $20, $30 million, whatever it may be, whatever crazy amount of money it's going to be if he's good. I mean, that was the smart thing. When they signed him to the gigantic contract, you can cut it after year one. No harm, no foul, because we all knew it was going to happen. Same thing happened to Ryan Fitzpatrick. You give a mediocre quarterback a ton of money, he's going to regress. He did regress.
Hey, listeners, thanks for tuning into this podcast here on the Gear Radio Network. We're going to kick it off to a couple of our sponsors right now that help keep this podcast and others on this network going. Check it out. We'll be right back in a moment.
Hey Gear Network listeners, we all know how busy it gets around this time of year. Taking care of your holiday shopping can get stressful. Using Amazon is a quick and easy way to get your holiday shopping done. You can go to gearnetwork.com/Amazon and click on the link to check out all the latest lightning deals that Amazon has to offer, as well as some of my top picks on gifts for everyone on your list. Anything you purchase from Amazon using the gearnetwork.com/Amazon link helps directly support our show, as well as the others offered on Gear Network, keeping us free and independent. Make it easy on yourself this holiday season and get the best deals at gearnetwork.com/Amazon.
Hey everyone, John Cimino here for the Gear Radio Network, and you have asked and asked repeatedly, what is up with the app? We know you have one, and you never push it, you never do anything with it. Well, guess what? We got a better one, and it is free. It is absolutely available for you, and there's so much more you can do with it. Visit gearnetwork.com and click Get the App. It's up on the top banner, or if you're feeling really brave, head to gearnetwork.mobapp.at on your mobile phone and your mobile phone's browser, and you can take Gear Network with you wherever you go. Listen to every show on the Gear Network right from the app. You can view all of our social networks in real time. You can read Gear Network and BLTDsports.com blogs in real time. And you can also shop Amazon and help us out and help you out. It is free. Did I mention that? Again, gearnetwork.com or gearnetwork.mobapp.at. Download it right now. We now take you back to the podcast.
It's like, because I want to transition over to hockey here in a second to kind of get your thoughts on the Sabres, but like you said, you need a Jack Eichel. If you don't have a goal scorer, if you don't have a quarterback, you can try as hard as you want to, but you're only going to go so far.
Right, exactly. And I was pointing it out earlier today when I was watching the game. I'm thinking, like, you know, my first memory of watching the Bills was back in I think it was the 99 playoffs when the Bills were in Miami. They lost the first round, and that was the year that Jimmy Johnson threw the box of Flutie Flakes on the ground and stopped it. And then my next memory is Music City Miracle. So I've seen the playoffs. I remember the Bills in the playoffs at least twice now. The thing is that, as I mentioned, this team is nothing without a star player, without a quarterback. I know that LaShawn McCoy is a star player in his own at running back. He's one of the best running backs in the league. I get that. But the thing is your run game can only get you so far. If you look back at the stats, the Bills ran the ball once in the second half today, and that was because they were down, they were in garbage time, and they couldn't do anything else but throw the ball. Tyrod Taylor was not good until garbage time, and that's not acceptable. You cannot have your quarterback being only good until garbage time. Then
you just have Blake Bortles.
Yes, exactly. And if the Bills want to be a successful franchise for many years to come, they need to find another guy. And I'm telling you what, that's not going to happen unless you scout really well and if you finish really poor in the standings. And I'm not saying, I'm not saying next year the Bills. Honestly, there's two ways next year that I want to see this team go. Either A, you find your quarterback, you find your coach, and you make the playoffs, and then you find some way after that to keep the success going. Or B, you finish 4-12, 3-13, and finish near the bottom of the standings and get a top draft pick. And Whaley, granted, Whaley, we know he traded all those picks, the first rounders, to go up and get a guy like Sammy Watkins. Sammy Watkins is a hell of a football player, but without a quarterback that is suitable for him, he will not succeed. There was a couple of throws that Tyron made today that Sammy Watkins had to reach back or get out and make these incredible catches. Sammy Watkins wouldn't have to do that if Tyrod Taylor could throw the ball, or if some quarterback could get Sammy Watkins the ball in an effective way. And I think that if the Bills do that, guys like Sammy Watkins will play better. LaShawn McCoy will play better. Robert Woods would play better. It all relies on your quarterback. And I know you want to get to hockey. I want to get to hockey too because I'm sick and tired of this. But my thought is that next year you have to either accept the fact you're going to be bad, and then you have to look at quarterback next year in a draft class that's supposedly good at quarterback. This year's not that bad. I've heard a couple of things where there could be a couple of guys that come out or stay or however it goes. But the thing is, next year is the year, in my opinion, that you need to bear down and draft a quarterback in the first round because next year is the year where your quarterback class is going to be probably the best that it has been in a while.
Well, and again, I'm of the thought process that you need to have a guy at the helm who you can trust with that, because you don't want a situation where you draft Jared Goff in Los Angeles and you're going to give him Jeff Fisher, because you just don't. That's just bad news Bears, man. You can't have that. So I think for me, top down, you want to have you want to just have give me a Doug Whaley guy, so we can put some. Let me see here. So we can put some pressure just in the organization. Just give me give me more continuity. I'm cool with that. I mean, the defense has talent. There's talent on the offense. Go out, re-sign Robert Woods. Go pick up another wide receiver. Get a faster tight end. I don't know. Do something. But you've got LaShawn McCoy, who's still proven to be a decent talent, if I may say so. Just get a guy, get a coach who's I don't know who it would be. I'm not a good coach scouter, but go out and get somebody who is a Doug Whaley guy who he likes, and then give us a couple years. Give me 2 or 3 seasons, and then see what happens. Because you know what? At that point, I'm sure someone will figure it out. Because you know what? At this point, again, you can fool yourself, and you can try to have a mediocre quarterback, but if you're going to have a mediocre quarterback, you better have a damn good running back that can run a ton, and you better have a damn good defense. And that's the long and the short of it. But I want to move over to hockey real quick here.
Let's go.
Buffalo Sabres are still bad. I mean, there's no way to look around it. At this point in time, we are, like I said, 27 games into the hockey season. 10-11-6. Buffalo Sabres it's not a bad amount of goals allowed per game. They're allowing 2.56, which is 11th in the league. That's really good. Now for the bad part. They are scoring a league worst 2.04 goals per game, which at one point in time before Jack Eichel returned a handful of games ago, it was about 1.8, I think. So they're getting close. They're moving on up. But they are 0.15 points away from 29th place, which is Colorado, who has 2.19 goals per game. The league average, if we're just looking here, 15th and 16th is 2.59 goals per game. So they are half a goal a game off the average in the league right now.
Right.
What exactly can the Buffalo Sabres do? I mean, aside from getting healthy and just getting some normalcy back to the lineup, which they pretty much have at this point. What can the Buffalo Sabres do at this point to get the playoff hopes back on track, being, I would say, more than a quarter of the way into the season?
Well, I think one thing that the Sabres need to do, I think it kind of goes twofold here, is that the Sabres need to find some chemistry. And I get it. The Sabres have been injured a ton this season. Jack Eichel missing the first, 19 games, 21 games of the season even. First 21 games. And now he's back, and now we're getting other guys back in the lineup like Nick Delorier, or Dmitry Kulikov. Josh Georges is back. We still have got Zach Bogosian to come back. We've got Tyler Ennis that needs to come back. The thing is that these guys need to find some chemistry now that this lineup is looking like an NHL team finally. And with that, shots need to start coming more. The offense needs to start producing more. And in the game against Washington, the Sabres weren't shooting the puck enough. I mean, they were on the power play. I was at the game, but I can't remember how many times they were on the power play. But the thing is, on the power play, they're setting up pucks. They're not shooting it enough. And I think that's what needs to happen more, is that the Sabres just need to get the puck on net more. And you don't want to get the puck on the net like Evander Kane does, just at any point necessary, but you have these chances. You are setting up chances with Eichel, with O'Reilly, with Oposo. You've got guys who can set up quality chances, and these guys are just either A, not shooting the puck, or B, just getting the puck over to guys who shouldn't be shooting the puck. And I think that once you develop a little bit more chemistry, it will come hand in hand. It'll be, okay, these guys are playing really well now that they've played a few games together. Now they're shooting the puck more and creating more offensive opportunities. And I think the Sabres have done just about anything that they can in goaltending. I think Milton and Leonard have done an adequate job of, keeping as many pucks out as they can. The defense, they're getting healthier, so we're no longer seeing ECHL and AHL defenders up on this roster right now. Justin Falk, he'll probably be going back to Rochester soon, I would imagine. But right now, the defense really needs help because Taylor Fadoon is still apparently got a shoulder injury. So, once he's, I think, fully healthy, I think he stays as your seventh defender, and Justin Falk will go back to the AHL. But another bad thing is that the defense, everybody needs to stay healthy, not just the defense, not just the forward. I think that if everybody stays healthy, if everybody develops some chemistry, I think the Sabres will eventually find their groove, and I think that they'll eventually find ways to put the puck in the net, to put the puck on goal, and be a juggernaut team that some people thought they were going to be. Now, I do want to mention here real quick that the Sabres cannot afford any more injuries, and I mean, they cannot afford any more injuries, because I was at the Amherst game on Friday, and the Amherst actually played today. This team, the Rochester team, their defense is so atrocious. They've got nobody down there to really help them out. Casey Nelson is probably their best young defender, but he still needs time to develop his game even further than he already has. That's why he didn't get the call up the last time when Eric Bergdorfer got the call, because he's not ready. He's not physically ready. He's not mentally ready right now. And right now, the AHL needs desperate help on defense because they're not getting it. They lost today 6-1 to the Hershey Bears, and Linus Ullmark was apparently standing on his head once again, like he had to do last Friday against Toronto when I was there. They need to help Linus Ullmark. They need to help themselves out, because if they don't, the Rochester team's going to be really bad. And if the Sabres have any more injuries on defense especially, it's not going to be any better.
I mean, at this point, I'm just looking here at statistics while you're telling everybody about how you feel. I mean, it sounds cliche, it sounds stupid, but really, in my opinion, the Buffalo Sabres need more luck. They just need to get a little luckier. I mean, they've been very unlucky with injuries. You've got Ryan O'Reilly shooting below career average by a few percentage points. You've got Sam Reinhart shooting well below what he shot last year by, I think, 4 or 5%. I mean, it's Kyle Okposo he's come in. He's been the guy everybody thought he would be. 18 points in 26 games. Ryan O'Reilly has 16 points in 21 games, despite the goals being a little under, like I said, average. Reinhardt's got 5 goals in 27 games. You probably want to see more from him, but he still has 14 points in 27 games. I mean, Marcus Foligno's looked good. Brian Gianta's looked good. Matt Molson's looked decent in an elevated role, but he's more of a bottom sixer at this point. But I mean, like you said, defensively, they've just been ravished with injuries. I mean, you never expected to see Brendan Gooley up playing with the Buffalo Sabres on emergency recall this season. You never expected to see the NHL debut of Eric Bergdorfer. You never thought you'd see Justin Falk or guys like that. I mean, it's just, I never thought I would see Taylor Fadoon playing a Buffalo Sabres uniform. It's just been a weird season with injuries. I mean, but if the Buffalo Sabres can just get a little more lucky, get a little luckier on, like you said, goaltending's been phenomenal. I mean, Leonard's got a 2.45 goals allowed per game. Nilsson's got a 2.38. That is below league average, as we mentioned with if you're comparing the goals amount allowed per game to the amount teams score per game. They've been good. I mean, Nilsson's been a sight for sore eyes. He came into Buffalo. A lot of people were wondering what the hell was going on because his numbers haven't been great. And Leonard has stood on his head for the most part. I mean, the record's not good, but the Sabres record isn't good. And that's obviously, those go hand in hand. I mean, at some point in time when Tyler Ennis comes back, you need to figure out real quick if Ennis is going to be the guy who's going to fit in the lineup, or if he's not, you got to figure out what you're going to do with him. You know, is Evander Kane going to be a guy you want to keep and protect in the upcoming draft next year? If not, you got to do something with him. I mean, do you try to trade Evander Kane for a defenseman? Do you try to package him for a different forward? I don't know, but at some point in time, players just got to start scoring more goals and just getting a little luckier. If it's not taking smarter shots and taking better shots, it's just positioning yourself better to score. I mean, because there's not another Jack Eichel walking through that door. I mean, your team is your team at this point in time, and if you can't make it work, you're not going to go very far. I mean, we've seen that with the Buffalo Sabres. I know we've seen Evander Kane. The one thing that was pointed out earlier this season is how, as Evander Kane has progressed in the league, his shot distance has increased, and his shooting percentage has decreased, and his goals have decreased. And there seems to be a direct correlation with that. I don't know why he doesn't want to go closer to the net and battle more. Maybe he thinks he's a different kind of player, but if you got a guy like that in the lineup who doesn't want to change his game or want to try to change his game to be better, then there's got to be another team in the National Hockey League that wants him. I mean, at least Vancouver wants him. So you got to figure out. You just got to figure out. Like I said, you just got to figure out. Sorry, Brayton. You got to figure out really quick what your team is going to be, and then go forward with it. Because what are you going to do with Matt Moulson? Because Matt Moulson started off red hot, but he was scoring power play goals. And can Matt Moulson do anything 5-on-5? Can he do anything in a decreased role, or does he need to be in a big role to be doing that? Because I mean, if Matt Moulson is in the bottom six and you're paying him $5+ million a season, you can't do that. I mean, you've got Gianta coming off the books. You might be able to pawn Josh Georges off on somebody with his contract. I mean, he still has a year left on his deal, but aside from that, I mean, the team that you have now is, barring trades, that's going to be your team for the future. I mean, yeah, things can happen, signings can occur, but you got to figure it out, because it's not going to get better. It's not going to fix itself overnight. Like I said, there's not another Jack Eichel walking through that door. You got to figure it out, and the Buffalo Sabres are struggling to figure it out. You think that, like I said, they may get a little luckier. They may find some chemistry, like the McCabe line. I think if stuff like that works out, or if you juggle some lines and they work out, perfect. But if not, you got to keep pushing buttons, because it's not like this is a team of veterans. It's not the Pittsburgh Penguins where you can go change a coach and they go win the cup. I mean, this is a young team. You're still trying to figure it out. You got to figure out which buttons are the right ones to push and go from there.
And I think that the Sabres have players that can fit Dan Biles' system. I don't think coaching is the issue here. I think it's players that are just not doing what they're supposed to be doing on a more consistent basis. If you look back at the Edmonton game on Tuesday, Buffalo was very good offensively. The second period was rough, but then third period, guys are throwing the puck on net. They're playing a little more desperate than Edmonton was at that point. They get the late goal to tie the game, and then in overtime, Ristolainen puts home the game with a really nice shot that goes off the post, gets a little lucky, and goes in. Now, you compare that to Friday's game against Washington. What happened? Buffalo wasn't shooting the puck more. They weren't creating a lot of opportunities. They were trying to set up too many cute little plays, and they just weren't getting the puck off. They weren't creating enough offense. And I think that's where everything differs. The Sabres need to find ways to create offense and create offense at a consistent basis, because you look at a game like Edmonton, they did do that, and they won. You look at a game, you look at, a few of the games before that, there are games where they put up offense, they're shooting the puck, they're creating chances, and then there are other games where they're not putting up enough shots on goal, they're not creating enough chances. And it's frustrating because this team has offensive pieces that can put pucks in the net. Ryan O'Reilly, Sam Reinhart, Jack Eichel, Kyle Okposo, even guys like Tyler Ennis when healthy, even guys like Marcus Foligno we've seen can put the puck in the net and do it consistently. The thing is that this team needs to create chances, and they're not doing it. That's the one thing that was frustrating about Friday's games, because they were just trying to do a little too much to set up, and in the end, it got them in trouble because they couldn't put the puck in the net, and Washington, they were doing just enough to being able to put the puck in the net, and it's just really, really frustrating to see the Sabres not being able to have success that way and not able to score. But the fact is that the Sabres really, really need to find ways to score. They really need to find ways to create offense, because if they don't, this is just going to continue for the rest of the season, where guys aren't scoring. And honestly, I thought Evander Kane was probably Buffalo's best player the other night. I thought he was skating hard. He was going into corners, winning puck battles, and trying to create as much offense as he could, except it can't be just one guy continuously trying to win games for them. It's got to be a collective effort, and it's just not happening for the Sabres.
And the one thing that I continue to show people when they talk about Dan Bilesma being the problem, first off, whatever you're on, I'll DM you my address. I want some, because it's got to be good. But seriously, you look at what Marcus Foligno has done. He may not be the greatest player in the world, but his game has become more consistent under an actual National Hockey League coach. He started under Lindy Ruff, who at that point in time most likely was burnt out. I mean, we've seen it. We saw what he did in Dallas with a very talented team. Just the end of his rope. Foligno wasn't horrible, very lucky. We see the stats, and we know how that works out. Then he just gets all these coaching changes, and nothing happens. And nothing, he just is the same old garbage player. Bilesma shows up. He gets a consistent coach. Things work out well. Dan Bilesma's not the problem. Everything else needs to come together. He's the focal point, like we said with the Bills. And we can wrap it up here because we kind of got a nice little bow on everything. It's the same thing that the Bills need to do, is what the Sabres are doing. You get a guy at the top. You clear everything out. You start with Tim Murray. You give him a Dan Bilesma. You let him go. You give him a couple years. You've got Doug Whaley. If Doug Whaley's your guy, give him a coach. Give him some time. Let him build out and see what happens. That's what you got to do. That's the state of Buffalo sports right now. Hectic. It's hell on earth. We've got articles all over the place talking smack about this guy, that guy, and the next guy and what they got to do. A lot of stuff needs to happen. But you know what, Brayton? As long as the crap keeps hitting the fan, we can podcast about it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's always stuff to talk about with Buffalo sports. As long as they stay bad, there's always something to talk about.
Well, hey, buddy, I appreciate you joining me tonight. Everybody.
Well, thank you for having me.
My pleasure, man. It's always good to talk to you. But I want to say again, I'm at Wolfe BLTD on Twitter. Guy in the line, Brayton, he is at BJ Wilson WGR on Twitter. We are better live than dead. You are not. You can catch us BLTDsports.com, at BLTD Sports on Twitter, Facebook.com/BLTD Sports. Thanks again for tuning in, guys. We will catch you sometime very soon.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.